That's emotion. We buy for emotional reasons, and we support it with logic, but we buy for emotional reasons. In marketing, we say you want people to know, like, and trust you. That's throwing marketing. If you don't like a person, are you going to buy from them? Probably not.
And you certainly won't trust them.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so that's it. You have your buddy, okay, Joe Lombardi, and he has money talk with Iron Hawk.
He sure does.
Okay, dude, it clicks together and it stays in the brain. How about this one? So I'll tell you how I discovered this in a second. But so how about this one? If the glove doesn't fit, you have to acquit.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show. Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on The Brian Nichols Show, and thank you for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in sunny Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered by our amazing friends over at AMP America. Folks, go get the news you need to know without the corporate media bias or fluff. Head to ampamerica.com. We have news articles, opinion pieces, podcasts, and more. One more time, ampamerica.com. Also, you can go ahead and support our amazing studio sponsor, and that is Cardio Miracle, which you can go ahead and find at our homepage, Brian Nichols Show, BrianNicholsShow.com/. Cardio Miracle. Now, with that being said, Cardio Miracle, yes, is the best heart health supplement in the world, bar none. It will help improve your restless nights of sleep. It'll help improve your pump at the gym while lowering your blood pressure, lowering that resting heart rate, plus a slew of other benefits. You want to learn more? Stick around. We're going to talk more about Cardio Miracle later in today's episode. But from the heart to the head, yes, we're going to go ahead and change topics a little bit today, focusing specifically on how we can go up to the ticker and get ideas to stick. We're going to call that brain glue. And how can you use brain glue, not just in the world of sales and marketing and business, but also in the world of sales and marketing in the world of politics? To join me to discuss all that and more. And I promise, before I introduce him, I swear, this is actually his name, James Bond. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. James, how you doing?
Hey, Brian, I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing good. So what do I owe the pleasure of having MI6 join me today?
Because what you're doing is so important, we got to share it.
James, obviously tongue-in-cheek here, right? You're joining us here in the show not to talk about James Bond, Sean Connery, Pierce Brosnan, and Golden Face, all those Golden Eye, all those bad guys, right? You're talking about brain glue today. But before we dig into brain glue, James, introduce yourself to the audience. Maybe talk about your not MI6 history, but rather your experience in the world of sales, marketing, talking about glue and how it applies to our brain, all that stuff and more. So give us the lowdown here.
So I'm one of America's leading behavioral management specialists. I work with a lot of famous people. Warren Buffett's team brought me in because I'm able to change what people are doing and thinking. And I work with Saul Price, who founded the Price Club and Costco. Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. I blew his mind with brain glue. In fact, he made me change the title because brain glue focuses on, I uncovered 14 tools that stick to the brain and make it easier to persuade. This is one of the things that most people don't realize. Persuasion is one of the most valuable skills you could ever develop. Okay? If you're trying to sell products and services, you definitely need to know how to do this, okay? If you're trying to win in politics or trying to change people's minds, you definitely have to do this. It's the economy, stupid, okay? I'll talk about that, okay? That's a trigger word, okay? If he said it's the economy, would we remember it as much as it's the economy, stupid? It's like, what? What did he just say, You seem like, okay. But so there are a lot of things. And so what you want to do is so that's emotion. We buy for emotional reasons, and we support it with logic, but we buy for emotional reasons. In marketing, we say you want people to know, like, and trust you. That's throwing marketing. If you don't like a person, are you going to buy from them? Probably not.
And you certainly won't trust them.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so that's it. You have your buddy, okay? Joe Lombardi, and he has money talk with Iron Hawk.
He sure does.
Okay, dude, it clicks together and it stays in the brain. How about this one? So I'll tell you how I discovered this in a second. But so how about this one? If the glove doesn't fit, you have to acquit.
Oh, R.I.P.
Exactly. So so he was in the what's his name again?
O.J. Simpson.
O.J. Simpson,
America's favorite running back.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. Running back. You could say it in a lot of different ways. Running back was running back. So Johnny Cochran, his attorney, it's actually his friend that gave him the idea, said, if the glove doesn't fit, you have to acquit. I remember after the trial, 2 of the jurors were asked, with all that evidence against OJ, how come you found him not guilty? And one of them said, well, the other one nodded her head in agreement. We knew if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. The glove didn't fit. We had to acquit. Mm-hmm. If I was competing, I would have said, you have to love how he fakes the glove. He's an actor, remember? You have to love how he fakes the glove, poetry. And so I discovered, I'm originally from Montreal, although I've lived in Southern California for like 37 years. We actually named our middle daughter L.A., Lauren Asia, okay? So people say, how long have you been in Southern California? Oh, how old's Lauren again? I ran an advertising agency in Montreal, and we worked my way up and won major clients, Kraft Foods, Timex watches, stuff like that. And I had the opportunity to win the anti-drug campaign in America with logic, with powerful logical reasons why you should not do drugs. And I lost, and I deserved to lose, because when I saw what beat us, it terrified me because it was so much better. And it was, a guy holding an egg saying, this is your brain, cracking the shell and dropping the egg into a sizzling frying pan. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? And most of us remember that. We're old enough to remember that. It was profound, and it stuck to the brain. And I realized I deserved to lose. This was infinitely more powerful than anything I knew how to do. But this was emotional selling. I was giving you logical reasons why you shouldn't do drugs. And this was emotion. He wasn't holding your brain. He was holding an egg, But I realized, wow, this was profound. And I had no idea how to do emotional selling. And so I did some research in the library and stuff like that. But there was nobody that really talks about emotional selling. And so I decided I created a passion box right next to my desk. I put a box, I call it a passion box. And every time I saw an ad or heard something, like a quote or something like that was emotionally powerful, rather than, trying to figure it out, I would just tear it out of a magazine and put it in a box, or write it on a 3x5 card. I love 3x5 cards, and put it in a box. So I put your brain in drugs and I put it in a box. After about more than a decade, we moved to Southern California, and I met John Gray. And John Gray was telling me he wrote this book that was incredible. It was called Men, Women, and Relationships. And people who read the book said, this is the most profound book I've ever read. It's helped my relationship. It's fantastic. And yet almost nobody was buying the book, and he was frustrated. So he came up with this crazy idea, a metaphor. And he changed the title to Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
I thought I knew that name. Okay, sorry. Okay?
Yep. And he said he just slightly tweaked the content, so he'd refer to it throughout the book, but it's basically the same book. What do you think happened? He went almost overnight, 500,000 copies got sold, and 1 million and 2 million. He went from 20,000 copies of the old book to 50 million, not 50,000, 50 million copies of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, all because he changed the title. And I was like, whoa. So of course I wrote it on my 3x5 card. And when I got home, I went, wait a second. He used a metaphor, because men aren't really from a different planet. Although I think you women out there probably think we are sometimes, okay? But we're not really from a different planet. Guess what? We might be, actually. But no, men are not from a different planet. But it makes sense, because it's basically saying men are so different than women that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. It's almost like we're from different planets. And that resonated with the brain.
Hey, folks, I want to take a moment to talk about something that has truly changed my life, and that is Cardio Miracle, our incredible studio sponsor. Now, I'll be honest, when I first heard about Cardio Miracle and their claims about improving heart health, I was skeptical. But after using it for just about 2 months, I was absolutely blown away by the results. First, my blood pressure went from being consistently around 140/90 to a much more healthier and manageable 120/80. And my resting heart rate dropped from the low 70s to the high 50s. And I couldn't believe it. But the benefits didn't stop there. I started sleeping better, and I felt more energized at the gym, and my heart felt the best it's felt in years. And it's not just me. Hundreds of you, our amazing listeners, have reached out to share your own incredible experiences with Cardio Miracle. So, what is Cardio Miracle, and how does it work? It's a carefully crafted supplement that harnesses the power of nitric oxide to support optimal heart function. So by increasing nitric oxide levels in your blood, Cardio Miracle helps relax your blood vessels, improve circulation, and it protects your heart from damage. It's like giving your heart the support it needs to function at its best. And here's the best part. We've got an exclusive offer just for you, our loyal listeners here at the Brian Nichols Show. When you head over to cardiomiracle.com and use code TBNS at checkout, you'll get an extra 15% discount on your order. Plus, with their 100% money-back guarantee, you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. So, if you're ready to take control of your heart health and experience the life-changing benefits of Cardio Miracle for yourself, just click the link in the show notes or video description. Trust me, your heart will thank you. And don't wait another day to prioritize your health. Join the tens of thousands of folks who have already discovered the Cardio Miracle difference. Head to cardiomiracle.com now and use code TBNS for 15% off your order. Your journey to a happier and healthier heart starts today. And now, let's get back to the show.
Then I remember, this is your brain on drugs was a metaphor also. He was holding an egg. They're probably sitting around a table and saying, so we need to come up with an ad for how to stop using drugs. So when you use drugs, what happens? Well, it fries your brain. Okay.
What else can you fry?
Exactly. Eggs. Let's fry an egg and say, there's your brain. Ah! It makes sizzling sound really loud. So it's emotional. And it became really profound. And so I went like, oh, have I just figured out how to do emotional selling? Or at least one of the main ways that you do emotional selling. So when I got home, I dumped the passion box on my bed and I discovered that metaphors is one of 14 brain triggers. And it's like, have I just figured out something and nobody figured out? And I started applying this first to clients, but this applies to politics. You won't believe how many things that, like, when you start to understand this, why do they say Biden's Build Back Better? Buh, buh, buh. Coca-Cola, Best Buy, PayPal, TikTok. Okay. I said to my youngest daughter, my kids I've got a son and 3 daughters, and they're like, my son is 42 and my daughters are in their 30s, except for my younger daughter. And I said, TikTok is a Chinese platform. And she said, no, it's not. And I said, yeah, check it out. She checked it out and went, oh, you think if it was called the Chinese social media platform, it would be as successful as TikTok? No, TikTok. I mean, it's just, and so Biden's Build Back Better. Trump has Make America Great Again. Good, great again. He kind of took it from, but it works because it resonates. And so when we start to understand the power of some of these tools, it's amazing. So rhyme is really powerful. If the glove doesn't fit, you have to quit. So back in the days of LBJ, Lyndon Johnson, people who were protesting against the war in Vietnam, they had this line. They said, hey, LBJ, how many kids have you killed today?
Yep.
Sticks in the brain. Okay.
Yep.
It sticks in the brain. And so what we want to do is we want to understand, if we're trying to persuade someone, we want to use trigger words or something that triggers the brain. I mean, I'll go back to, I was thinking of trigger words, and it was the week of dirty. Okay. Dirty was my word. Oh, let me tell you about how my book changed first. Okay.
Yeah.
So the week of ass was my book. Okay. Initially. And there was, the guy who started Big Ass Fans. He actually had a big fan company, Carrie Smith, and he decided to, he was trying to explain to people how he had these fans, and they're really big. You can put them in barns. So where you got cows and horses, you're not going to put air conditioning, you put a fan, but big fans. Okay. So so you don't need lots of fans. And so he was trying to explain to somebody, these are really big fans. He said, how big? Oh, come on, they're big ass fans. And the guy starts laughing and went, oh, okay.
A big ass fan. Okay. Yeah, I know one of those.
Exactly. And he starts thinking, well, maybe what if I run an ad and I say these are big ass fans, and sales exploded. Then he decided to change the name of his company to Big Ass Fans. And he eventually, after 15 years, sold the company for $500 million. Okay, sales exploded. Of course, they didn't just use it for farms, barns. They use it for warehouses and things like that. So I originally, that was the week I was coming up with I had written the book and I was going to come up with a title. So I decided to use ass in the title, and I called it "Sell More with a Big." Shoot, I got to remember the name. Dump your half-ass marketing strategy. That's what it was. Okay, but Amazon decided we don't want swear words, and ass is a swear word. Dump your half-ass marketing strategy. So I was like, and I got like at that point 80 fans, 80 reviews. So reviews, the more reviews you get, like over 100 reviews, they help promote it. So I begged them. I got them on the phone, different people, tech people, and I begged them. I said, "You guys are forcing me to change the title. Will you let me change the title and sort of carry the fans over?" And they said, "Yes, fine." So me, like an idiot, I'm trying to sell emotional selling, and I came up with a logical title. The title I came up with, "Sell More with the Right Brain Marketing Strategy." So I got to Jack Canfield, and we snuck one of my books in because he reviews lots of books. And I have a friend that snuck one of my books in. And he got me on the phone. He gave me reviews and video reviews and everything else. I mean, he's a billionaire. He sold over $1 billion worth of chicken soup for his soul, which is, by the way, a metaphor. Okay, you open it up, you don't get chicken soup. You can't drink the book. But it's just he became massively wealthy because of it. It's one of the most successful books of all time, a series of books. And he said to me, "I love your book. I'm giving copies to everybody on my team, everybody who works for me. I'm requiring that they not just read it, but use it." I said, "Oh, wow." He said, "But I'm really pissed off at you." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry. Why?" He said, "Well, I started reading your book and I couldn't put the damn thing down. I have all these books to read and review and I couldn't put your damn book down." So I'm like, "I apologize. I'm really sorry. Can I use that quote?" He said, "On one condition, you got to change the title of the damn book." I said, "What?" He said, "The whole book's about brain glue. You're teaching us to sell emotionally, and you have a damn logical title. You got to change the title. So you're teaching us, it's emotional." And so I had to change the title. I said, "Do I have to?" He said, "Yes." He's giving me fantastic reviews and video reviews and everything else. But he was right. I mean, I'm trying to, most people who are in business, and even in politics, a lot of people in politics are logical. We're problem solvers, and problem solving is logical. You have to look at that and go, okay, that's the problem. I wonder if we do this, we can solve it, and whatever else. Okay. We have bad economy. Maybe we can solve it. Okay. Whatever else. Some people are stupid. I'm not going to get into that, but stupid ideas that are not logical, by the way. Like Kamala, who's taking what happened in, countries that have failed. What's it called?
Price controls.
Exactly.
Yep.
They collapsed. They were the fourth largest economy in the world. Okay, the fourth largest economy in the world, Venezuela, and then they decided to start controlling the price of food and other things, and suddenly the economy collapsed, and they virtually went practically bankrupt from the fourth largest economy in the world. Anyway, but logic, and we got the logic. Okay, but so I realized that logical people have to learn emotional selling, because we buy for emotional reasons. And so there's so many things that are, there's something called chiasmus. Okay. So chiasmus works this way. It starts this way and then ends this way. It flips. Okay. All for one and one for all. Okay. President John F. Kennedy, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." Okay. He also said, "Mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind."
I was thinking of the one that "we must go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard."
Yeah, there you go. The flip, that's like,
look at me. I'm picking up what you're putting down. All right.
In-N-Out burgers. Okay. They don't have as much money as McDonald's and Burger King and everything else. And yet they're doing well. They're family owned, but In-N-Out. In-N-Out also means sex for a lot of people, by the way. I remember driving down the street and, they opened up a small location. And so I look at my wife and I go, "In-N-Out burgers? In-N-Out?" But of course we went in and checked it. And if you have good product, which they have good product, then you're going to come back. But they didn't, that's one of the things in marketing is people who don't have a lot of money, which is most of us. I do now, but most of us who don't have a lot of money, brain glue helps you sell like crazy. But it also helps politicians when you're trying to sell stuff. Okay. because the more you can understand how rhyme works. I mean, think about this with OJ. They were going to throw him in jail. They had so much evidence against him, and then this rhyme got him out of jail. Yep. I mean, that's how powerful it is, because logic, here's this, here's evidence. Oh, come on, I mean, it's just, look at Biden decides he's going to stay in. Now he's decided he's out, but he decided he's going to stay in. So what did they say? The first thing they said was, he's in it to win it. Okay? They're trying to do something that sticks to the brain. By the way, they stole that line from Shark Tank. By the way, Shark Tank. How about that for a name? Okay. I was in the hospital recently for heart bypass surgery. Not fun, by the way, everybody out there. But I'm telling this nurse this story, okay? And I said, so this mom and son living in Utah love Shark Tank. And so she started pushing her son and said, we got to come up with a product and, get somebody to manufacture it for us and start selling it so we can get on Shark Tank, because they love Shark Tank, the idea. And so it took about a month, and she was constipated. And so the doctor told her, when you sit on the toilet, if you raise your feet, you got it. Okay.
I know where you're going.
Okay. If you raise your feet 6 to 8 inches off the ground, it changes the shape of your body. You can go to the bathroom much easier. So she goes, oh, wow, that's a great idea. Maybe that should be she tried it and it worked. She said, that's the product we should have. And so they created this little, round stool that goes behind the toilet. So if you get a friend sitting at the toilet, you don't have to stand on the stool. But, you just slide it out. You put your feet on it, and there you are. Okay, you're on the stool. And it was called, we always start with the logic. It was called the toilet stool. But that doesn't really work, the toilet stool. I'm telling you.
Sounds a little messy there, James. Sounds a little messy.
Exactly. So they're going toilet. What's another word for toilet? Potty. You're kind of squatting. Squatty potty. Let's call it the Squatty potty. Okay. They have no business experience, and they generated $100 million of sales. Okay.
And by the way, we all remember the Squatty potty commercials with the unicorn and the ice cream. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. But they had the money to pay for the advertising. Remember, it didn't start. They started making money before they had the ads, and then they said, "Oh wow, let's spend some money on advertising," and it went out from there. Okay. But the point is, I'm telling the nurse this story about the Squatty potty because I'm talking about brain glue, and she goes, "You know what? It's interesting. You should say that, because I knew long before they made the product all about this idea of raising your feet and everything else. But when I saw the product Squatty Potty, I loved the name so much, I ended up buying it, even though I knew I could put my foot on anything, because it stuck to their brain. She loved the name Squatty Potty so much, she ended up buying it. And that's how powerful brain glue is. So how would you like to come up with a product name how would you like to invent the product that's so amazing that it's incredible, but your biggest enemy steals it from you, comes up with a better name, and they make a fortune while you starve to death? Wouldn't that be fun? Come on, that would be fun, wouldn't it? Not. Okay.
Well, and James, if I may, so I'll hop on my soapbox here for a second. So this is exactly why this show exists, by the way. Because now, mind you, we're not going into the brain glue, but rather in the audience for the Brian Nichols Show, we are politics, we are business owners, entrepreneurs, but this show started out as a libertarian podcast. Now, I myself, I identify as a small L libertarian, meaning that I am not a big L, meaning I am a libertarian by party name, but rather by policy, by principle. And when I talk to libertarians, the reoccurring theme, James, we got some pretty good ideas. We got great solutions, but the problem, and this is across the board, is that we just can't seem to figure out how to get people to look at our ideas and say, oh, look at that. They got a solution to the problem that we're all facing right now. And what happens is libertarians jump into a conversation saying, well, check this out. Look at the solution, how great it is. And what they do is they start going through the facts, the features, the benefits, all the stuff that, unfortunately, at the end of the day, your average person really doesn't care about. Because to your point you raised earlier, and by the way, I'm glad you said this because we've said it many a time here on the show and you're just driving the point home, people do not make buying decisions based on facts and logic and reason. They make buying decisions based on emotion, and then they use the facts, the logic, the reason to reaffirm, oh yeah, I made the right choice. So I say all that because this is a reoccurring theme, not just in business, but in the world of politics, specifically to you, my audience, who I've heard you over the past 8 years we've been doing this show. This has consistently been one of the main issues that we struggle with, whether we're running for local office or we're running for president. We still seem to have an issue of getting people to actually care. So I say that, James, let's focus on the world of politics and let's talk about emotional language. You mentioned, I wrote a few of them down here. It's the economy, stupid. You mentioned Build Back Better for Biden. You mentioned Trump's Make America Great Again. There's emotional language. There's brain glue being leveraged against us all the time. So how can, and let's just look at, we'll say, libertarians, I guess, in this conversation, but it could be across the board. Like, what are some of the emotional tools for being successful and making ideas sticky? How about that? That we can actually start to implement today that puts us in a better position when we're talking and facing against folks who are leveraging brain glue right now.
So let me give you 2 examples.
Cool.
One is chiasmus and one is anchoring. Okay, these are 2 powerful examples. So chiasmus, I said, like all for one and one for all. Malcolm X wanted people to understand, for him back then, that it was tough being a black person in America. So what he said was, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock, the rock landed on us. And he goes, what? And people liked him because he would say things that people go, whoa. You know, he said, when you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. These are powerful things, okay? So I am not against the right to bear arms. I just want to say that. But I love brain glue, so I love the fact that they use this. Same idea, okay? Chiasmus, flip. The right to bear arms is almost as crazy as the right to arm bears.
Okay, Robin Williams.
Exactly. I mean,
that's a classic.
It's just really. So then we have anchoring, okay? And anchoring is so head and shoulders, knees and toes, eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. So if I'm coming up with a dandruff shampoo, it affects head and shoulders. Why don't I steal the name and call it Head and Shoulders? Okay, that's anchoring. Okay, where you take something that exists, either twist it slightly, or use it the way it is. There's this guy, Bobby. Got to get his name here. Bobby Flay, and he's a
Food Network
chef.
Yep.
Okay, and so he was trying to come up with a name, and he used anchoring.
Is it Beat Bobby Flay? Is that the show you're talking about? Because that's a show.
But his original show was called Boy Meets Grill.
That's right. That's right.
Instead
I forgot about
Boy
that.
Meets Girl. He said grill. What grill sounds like girl? What else goes with grill? Girl. Boy meets girl. Oh, there we go. Boy meets grill. Okay. So President Reagan. This is not a pro or anti Reagan. Okay, but Reagan was president around just after the Vietnam War. So people were really anti-Vietnam War and anti anything that had to do with war. And so he needed to create a missile defense system. Excuse me. That's what his guy said. We need to spend some money on a missile defense system so we can start to knock missiles out when they're firing, if they're firing at us in America. But if we call it the missile defense system, then people are going to really fight us. Well, back then, guess what movie was popular? Star Wars.
Oh, you beat me to it. I was going to start pulling out all my little action figures.
There you go. Star Wars had just launched, had become popular, and everybody loves Star Wars. So he decided to call it the Star Wars Missile Defense System. And suddenly, instead of all these people fighting against it, how you do this war thing and everything else, instead, people went, oh, wow, cool, Star Wars Missile Defense System. And almost everybody was pro the thing because he anchored it, okay? So here's another anchor. You can't hug a child with nuclear arms. It's illogical. And yet, because it goes together, you know, you can't hug a child with nuclear arms, you know? It's like you hug a child with your arms, but nuclear arms, you know? So they took the word arms and they related it that way. So what we want to do is we want to understand that, you know, there are certain ways that you can trigger the brain where the brain becomes much more responsive. I'll go back to, it's the economy, stupid. So, let me give you the story about creating a product, but somebody else steals it from you, gets a better name. Okay. So Post Cereals was competing against Kellogg's. And so the head of Post Cereals invented this product that you put in your toaster, and it's like a little cake. You put in your toaster. When it comes up, it's nice and warm, and you got a little jelly inside it and everything else. Decided to call it Country Squares. And 3 months before he launched it, it's an idiot. 3 months before he launched it, he bragged to the media, "We have this new product called Country Squares. It's going to pop out of the toaster and everything else." So the head of Kellogg's said, "Hey, guys, look at this. We need to figure out how to invent this thing. We got to make that same thing, okay? Okay, we got just a couple of months to do the thing. And we need a better name." And he was thinking about it. He says, "Well, it pops out of the toaster. So pop. And back then it was Andy Warhol was famous, and he was a pop artist. So that's anchoring, where you take something that already is in the mind of everybody. So he said, let's call it Pop-Tarts. Okay. He launched it 1 week before Country Squares launched. Sales exploded. They sold out. He actually ran apology ads, full page apology ads in newspapers and major magazines saying, "I'm really sorry we ran out of product, but just hold on for a couple of days and we're going to have more product in there." Nobody bought Country Squares, and Pop-Tarts they sold last year 3 billion Pop-Tarts.
That's
okay?
it?
3 billion. Yeah, that's it. That's all. Country Squares lasted for 90 days. They tried, and they ended up stopping to sell it because they couldn't make money. But
which, by the way, same product, right? Same exact product.
Same. I saw an article recently, and it says the guy that invented Pop-Tarts just died. I said, "Oh, that's odd, because the guy that invented Pop-Tarts was the head of Post Cereals." I'm reading it. It says, "Yeah, he's the head of Post Cereals," but it isn't talking about the fact that they don't make Pop-Tarts.
Wow.
I mean, it's just what we want to do is we want to understand these little triggers. I mean, we remember when we were kids. So Jack and Jill went up the
hill.
Think of how long ago it was that the last time you heard it, and yet it sticks to your brain like glue. You know, I remember. I mean, I'm old, so it might have been 50, 60 years ago that I heard it. You know, and yet I still remember. I could be on my deathbed, and they could say, "Hey, James, Jack and Jill went up the hill, the fetch a pail of water." It sticks to the brain. Things stick to the brain, most of these things, so that, you know, it resonates and it just stays in the brain. And it's amazing how the brain is designed in such a way that we remember certain things. So if you can use rhyme, or if you can use one of the other tools, or if you can anchor, which means take something that already exists and in people's minds and then use it or twist it slightly, then it becomes easier to remember. There's another one too. There's this thing. We have to remember that if you logic, okay, numbers are logical. If you throw too many numbers at people, then they tend to not buy or remember things, okay? So if I said, Americans discard 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour. Boy, doesn't that sound like a lot? 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour. What if I told you that's enough to reach the moon every 3 weeks?
Because otherwise, 2.5 million bottles of water. I mean, go imagine $2 million. Good luck, right? Like you can't really conceptualize that, but I can imagine a bunch of water bottles end to end going indefinitely out into the sky, going up to the moon. Like you can at least put a picture to that.
Exactly. And that's what you want to remember is that, you know, if you say, so I say, I am anti this in politics. Okay. I say this line. I just want to say the line right. Okay. So you stop the U.S. government from stealing your money and giving it to their friends. So I live in Southern California now.
I'm sorry.
Warmer than I know. Well, what can I say? So anyway, but and I remember on NPR, which I call national. Anyway, never mind. I have a whole national.
You can say it. Friendly audience here, James.
National propaganda radio. Okay, there you go. But they were saying this thing which really blew my mind, and they were talking about how Los Angeles was given $100 million to build low-income housing, and after 10, they're saying it as a report, and after 10 years, guess how many low-income houses they built?
Probably like what, -4?
0.
Yeah,
so where'd all the money go? Consultants. What? They got $100 million and it went to consultants, but they didn't build anything. But they said they're getting it for low-income housing. It's like, what? What are you talking about? They're building this train. I mean, I shouldn't say
the high-speed rail. Yeah,
the high-speed rail. Yeah, you know how much it cost?
A
It
lot.
was. They said it cost $35 billion. They're already at 135 billion, and they're not even a quarter of the way building the damn thing. And nobody wants it. Nobody wants it. So how about this one? We gave 100, not 100 million. Okay, 100 million was to Los Angeles. We gave $100 billion to Ukraine, and literally within a
200, I think.
no, initially 100 million.
Oh,
No,
initially,
they
yeah.
gave a
Sorry,
lot more
I
than that.
forgot
No,
about
they
the extra 100 million.
Yeah, I'm talking about the very first number they gave was $100 million. Okay, $100 billion, not 100 million, $100 billion.
Billion.
How much is a billion? It's $1,000 million. Okay, how about if you gave $1 million to 1,000 Americans? I'd love that. But they gave $100 billion to Ukraine, and then within a week of giving the money, they said, you know, the government said this. The only problem is half that money is unaccounted for.
That's it. Just half.
What? So 500 billion, so $100 billion, so $50 billion is gone. You know how many people you can give $50 billion? You can give 150, you know, how would you like to have $15,000 given to 1 million Americans?
Not bad.
That's how much money it is. It's like, you know, and then they did $1.3 trillion. Let's go into that one, right? You could give 10 million Americans $15,000. Hey guys, well, who wants a $15,000? Oh, never mind. They stole it and gave it to their friends instead. You know, it's just when you start to understand perspective, and that's one of the things that people don't understand. When you throw too many statistics and perspective at a lot of people, it turns off the emotion centers of the brain where people buy. I mean, I remember I was working with this finance company, and they were talking to this guy who's famous, so I can't say who it was, but he was really a famous musician. And they're saying, you know, we have this financing that we think is really good, and you make like about 12% interest on it, and it's very secure and everything else, which is a lot of money and all that. And I looked at him, and he had like glassy eyes. He was like, okay, you know, I mean, he just couldn't relate because he's a musician, which is emotional anyway. So I went over and I said, which was true, John Lennon, before he died, invested in this, and this was one of the things that helped him be able to transfer most of the money he made to his family and his kids and all that stuff. As soon as I said that, he went, John Lennon did it? I want it too. You know, bam, I want it too. And that's why we got to understand like emotion, how emotion works. I mean, I work with Warren Buffett's team. They brought me in because I'm a behavioral management specialist. And Warren Buffett has great lines that he uses that are definitely brain glue. And he said, only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. Trigger word, by the way, naked. Okay. What's he basically saying? Only when times get tough do you realize who's capable and competent, right? But if he said that, you go, oh, yeah, right. But you wouldn't remember it because it goes in one ear out. It's logic. But by saying only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked, the brain goes, huh? What? Oh, wow. Oh, I get what he's saying. Yeah. Okay. You know, and we can relate to it on many levels. And that's why the power of metaphors is really powerful. That's why, you know, Jack Canfield, who I work with, I mean, I shared, you know, the book and everything else. I mean, he made so much money from this. And it's interesting. Jack Canfield had this interesting line. He was explaining to me that he did Chicken Soup for the Soul. The book sold 100 million copies. And then the other Chicken Soup for the Soul book sold another 400 million copies. So it's 500 million copies. That's a ton. And then he came out with 60 other books that are bestsellers. And of course, people are standing in line to promote him. He had lots of money, so he could promote himself. And he became very successful. But he's telling me, you know, there are a lot of, originally the book title was going to be called 101 Stories That Motivate You. But he went, that's just a logical thing. That's not really, you know, that's not really going to get people wanting to buy the book. And he said about a month later, as he's thinking about it, over a month, he woke up and he went, chicken soup. Oh, wow, chicken soup makes you feel better. My book is like chicken soup. Why don't I call it Chicken Soup for the Spirit? Okay. And he goes, okay, it doesn't really work, but it's kind of close. Again, it's alliteration. Chicken soup, well, you know, for S-O-U-P, S-O-U-L, okay? So I went for a sleepless weekend, sleepless nights, and then I went, wait, soup, soul. Why don't I call it Chicken Soup for the Soul? And the rest, as they say, is history, okay? You use two brain glue tools. One was a metaphor, because it wasn't really chicken soup, and then for the soul, soup, soul. So it's kind of alliteration. It sort of works together. But once he put those two together, he said it became massively successful. I want to say this. I didn't invent brain glue. I invented the term brain glue, but brain glue has been around since people have been trying to persuade other people. You just have to learn the tools. So he emotionally came up with the name Chicken Soup for the Soul, but he realized as he's talking to me and reading the book, he said, there's so many of my other books that I could have used those tools also, and I didn't. I just had logical titles, you know? And he said, yeah, I definitely could have had even higher sales, but also more relating to people if I could use those types of tools. And that's, you know, most of us are logical. And if you're logical out there, you have to learn emotion, because once you start learning emotion, which is rhyme is a good example, you're going to start, two things are going to happen. The first one is you're going to start recognizing, oh, wow, Coca-Cola uses it. Best Buy uses it, you know, literally. You start recognizing blockbusters out there that use it. And there are tons of blockbusters like Famous Amos cookies. You know, he came up with the name Famous Amos. If he said Amos's chocolate chip cookies, would you have bought as many of his people as Famous Amos? No, it sticks to the brain. It goes back to that woman who said, the nurse who said, I love the name Squatty Potty, and that's why I ended up buying the product, even though I already have something like that. I love the name, so I bought it. There's something about brain glue tools that stick to the brain and affect how we make decisions. And when we start to understand that, I had this guy, this is meant for politics and for, you know, selling stuff if you're trying to sell stuff and everything else. This guy's telling me, I finally got 2 dates with the girl of my dreams using your stuff. I said, it wasn't really made for it. He said, no, but it works. I told her a joke. She started laughing. I started doing this and, you know, applying some of the tools. I had a rhyme. She gave me her name. I said, Randy is Andy. Randy loves candy. Her name was Randy. And she starts laughing. And I said, and I came up with a rhyme for how to date. I forget what his rhyme was, but he said, can a rhyme for a date, you know? And she said, yes, okay, fine, you know? And he said, I'm on my second date with her now, and it's really great. But I didn't realize that it's really powerful, you know, using these tools. Now, let me give you this one tool that's really, it changed my life, okay? And it's called Simple Reflexive Questions. And it works this way. Isn't it, doesn't it, shouldn't, or simple reflexive, shouldn't it, or simple reflexive questions that you add to the end of the sentences, aren't they? And when you do that, it actually, one of the most powerful tools of human interaction is something called it's called reintegration, which is the brain's need for completion. So if you hear a question, you want to answer it, don't you? And so when somebody asks you a question, you kind of, I talk to an audience because I work with the small business administrations. So I have like, you know, 300, 400, 500 people who are business owners, and I'll ask them a question. I'll teach them the power of simple reflexive questions. And I'll say, okay, so if I keep asking you questions, you're going to keep answering it, right? And then most of them stop. I said, you might have stopped, but you're still nodding your head inside, aren't you? And they go, yeah, okay, fine. Because you can't, you know, because when somebody talks to you, let me give you an example of how this works. When somebody talks to you, but they ask you a question at the end of the statement, it wakes you up and you respond. You become more responsive. So I have this friend, and we wanted to play like some football, throw a football around. So I said, it's a beautiful day. So I said, it's a beautiful day. Like, you want to play football? But I said to Joe, hey, Joe, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? And he goes, yeah. And my ears heard, why is it? What's wrong? He said, no, nothing. I said, no, what? He said, it's not a big thing. I said, what? He said, my girlfriend we're having a fight right now. Oh, wow, what's going on? I got to talk with him about his issue. I would not have been able to talk with him about his issue if I said, it's a beautiful day, let's go outside and play football. He would have said, yeah, okay, fine, let's go out. But I said, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? And suddenly he stopped and he went, okay. It had no relationship to whether it was a beautiful day or not. It meant, because I asked him the question, he stopped and went, oh, okay. So I had these 3 guys who are partners of a construction company. After 10 years, they had $2 million of sales. That's not bad, right? Ha ha ha! I took them to 10 million in 1 year by applying brain glue, and it's 32 million 2 years later. But I was sitting and talking to them. And I was talking to this one guy, and this is while simple reflexive questions were stuck in my brain, okay? So I'm kind of used to it. It changed my relationship with my family and everything else, because instead of just talking and solving problems and stuff, I would have these questions. So I'm sitting and talking to this guy. His name is Brian, like you. And I said, hey, Brian, I started explaining the product that they have, that we had, that I thought would help them grow their business. And I said, so it sounds really good, doesn't it? And he goes, yeah. Does that mean yes? Or does that mean maybe there's something going on? So he said, yeah. I said, well, what's wrong? No, it's okay. Go ahead. Continue with the presentation. Oh, no, what's wrong? What's up? Come on, Brian, what's up? He goes, well, it sounds fabulous and we can definitely use it, but I don't think we have enough time in the day and the week. And I said, come on, it's 2 hours a week. You guys can be in the bathroom for 2 hours a week. He started laughing and he said, no, okay, fine. And from that point forward, he said yes, and I ended up buying it. I took him to from 2 to 10 million in sales in 1 year and then to 32 million 2 years later by applying brain glue. But the point is, and for all of us, it's really important. One of the most important things we could learn is simple reflexive questions. Isn't it, doesn't it, shouldn't it, don't you agree? Because when you ask that, I mean, you're an interviewer, so that works, okay? So you're always asking questions. But when we're talking to people, if we're trying to do a sales pitch, we want to talk, and all the bullet points and everything that's really great about it before we ask them for feedback.
Show up and throw up.
Exactly. You got it. Exactly. But that's not the most effective way. The most effective way is give them a little bit, ask for feedback. Give them a little bit, ask for feedback, even if it's wired into you. And when you say, when you start throwing simple reflexive questions at them while you're going through a presentation, you catch objections when they come up.
Mm-hmm.
So if I said, we're talking about elections or whatever else it is, and you're talking to people, if they come up, if you say something and they get an objection, often people won't tell you, well, I don't agree with that, and they're not going to stop. Sometimes it will, and some people will, but many people will go, okay, I don't agree with that, but go ahead, let's continue talking. The longer you go talking without addressing the objection, the harder it is to address the objection. In fact, many people often even forget what their objection is, but they remember there's something they don't like. And that's why the earlier you can catch it, the more powerful it is. And it works with kids. I have a son and 3 daughters. And my middle daughter, we gave her initials LA, Los Angeles. We gave her Lauren Asia, AJ.
Attention, freedom lovers. I am excited to tell you about the new Expat Money Summit that's happening this year from October 7th to October 11th. This is your chance to learn from over 40 experts about crafting your perfect plan B, from acquiring a second passport to diversifying your finances offshore and investing in international real estate. Headline speakers include Liberty legends like Dr. Ron Paul, Doug Casey, and Scott Horton. And the best part, it's absolutely free to attend. Simply visit expatmoneysummit.com to reserve your complimentary ticket. Don't wait. Secure your spot at the world's largest offshore event today. One more time, that's expatmoneysummit.com. And now, let's get back to the show.
So I was sitting and talking with her when she was 21, and I said, hey, Lauren, she was the quiet one. My oldest daughter was a type A. And so I said, hey, Lauren, how's it going? And she said, it's not bad. I said, and I was practicing simple reflexive questions. I said, well, what's wrong? And then she said to me, you're a consultant. You've been a consultant all your life. And so every time I would say something, you would cut me off and then start trying to solve my problem. Do you realize?
Guilty, by the way. That's me.
Welcome to the club, okay? She says, do you realize what you're doing? You're basically saying to me, I'm stupid and daddy's smart, so listen to daddy. Instead of letting me solve the problem. I said, no, I didn't mean it that way. She said, also, you never, when I talk, and this is a girl versus guy thing too, a lot. She said, when I talk, you'll stop me and try to solve my problem instead of just shutting up and listening. And you don't know a lot of, I know, welcome to the club. I know I'm not, but it is very common with guys that we want to learn how to be much more interactive with our family members for sure, but also with friends and with prospects and whatever else we're talking to, so we can catch them early on, but also so we can be interactive and not just be, throwing our content at them. I might be smart and I figured something out and everything else. Too bad. That's, you throw it at people and it goes in one or out the other. And that's why when we use these types of tools, it makes us much more reactionary, much more interactive, and we can catch people early on. And then when you catch people early, you interact with people early on. And most of us don't like being told what to do.
What?
Yeah, really. I'm going to tell you what to do now. You're going to run your show this way. You're going to do this. I mean, it's just nuts. I love it with communism. Okay, I had kids in college. Because I would do sometimes at some of the universities. I'd go in and teach them selling, and I said, so some of you kids like communism, right? So let me understand this. I want to make sure I understand this. This is a brain glue tool, by the way. Okay, we're relating this. I said, I'm guessing you don't like your parents telling you what to do. Raise your hands if you don't like your parents telling you what to do. Okay. And almost everybody would do that. And I would say, okay, but you want the government to tell you what to do? Let me see if I understand. I want to make sure I understand this now. You don't want your parents to tell you what to do, but you want the government to tell you what to do. Those some of them putzes out there who are in the government. You want them telling you what to do, right? How to live your life? Come on, are you nuts? That's what communism is. Capitalism is where we tell them what to do. They don't tell us what to do. And that's really how it's supposed to be. They're supposed to be public servants. I think a lot of these people in government have forgotten that. But again, here's a metaphor, finding something. I have a friend, Joseph, who's narrow-minded. And so I wanted to tell him, Joseph, this is using a brain glue tool, okay? Joseph, stop being so narrow-minded. If I said that, he would basically say, shut up, mind your own business or whatever else, okay? Or swear at me, okay? But I went, okay, let me use a brain glue tool. So I want him to be open-minded. What else works when it's open? An umbrella, a parachute, a book. You can buy a book, but if you never open it, you're not going to benefit from it, okay? So I said, okay, let me do parachute. So I said, hey, Joseph, instead of telling him, hey, Joseph, you got to be more open-minded. I said, hey, Joseph, your brain is like a parachute. It works better when it's open. He went, okay, well, what do you mean? What do you think? And I got into a conversation with him. So instead of him fighting me, he kind of went, well, I get what you're saying. Okay, what do you mean? And he became much more receptive. And so that's why when we understand some of these tools, I'm telling you, persuasion is one of the most valuable tools we can ever have. Because if you find something, or if you learn something, or if you discover something, or if you're trying to sell something, or if you're trying to pick up have a date with the girl of your dreams, as that guy did, you want to learn how to speak in such a way that, it just opens their mind where they become much more receptive to us. And when they do that, it's mind-blowing how much this works. Tell them a joke or tell them a rhyme. I always say, I'd rather wake up and pee than pee and wake up. Okay. And that's chiasmus, flip.
So, James, I think, so we are getting to the end of the show here, and I want to just drive a point home that you just brought up here. The Brian Nichols Show, 2017, technically. I was thinking of the name for the show, and I was like, the Brian Nichols Show. That just, people will know it's me. Facts, logic, reason. And I'll tell you what, for the past 8 years, I've seriously considered renaming the show. And after our conversation today, I'm even more seriously considering renaming it, not because I want to go through and change all of my logos and change all of my branding, but rather because I want it to stick. And we've been doing great. We've been growing leaps and bounds. We have a brand new sponsorship that we've been working with AMP America. We've been reaching tens of thousands of new folks. But I know that there are things that I can do better. I know that there are things that the libertarian movement can do better. There are things that businesses can do better. And it really comes down to, I think, from our standpoint, taking a step back and realizing, much to what you articulated today, beyond the brain glue, just an acknowledgement that we don't have all the answers. And this is something I've had to get better at over the years, is that you go into thinking like, oh, I got to figure it out, especially when you're in your 20s and stuff, and you're young, you're dumb, and you know it all. But as I've grown, as I've had my daughter, as I've started a family, here I am today. I look back to the show I created. And while I love this show, I love the guests I have, I love my audience, but I also know that just the Brian Nichols Show isn't compelling. It's not getting new people to go through their Apple Podcast feed and say, ooh, what's that? But I'm sure I could sit down with you at some point and we could brainstorm some fun possible different names. I have Brian's Briefing. That's now a part of my show. And even though it's not a rhyme, I'm trying to use the alliterative approach, like Peter Parker or Bruce Banner. Let's do Brian's Briefing. And just elephant in the room, folks. Those Brian's Briefings episodes, they are some of the most watched and downloaded episodes because I think they kind of know what they're getting. But that's, for me, not even enough. I want it to continue going forward. So I say that for myself. And I look at folks in the audience, and I look at folks in the world of politics and in the world of business, and I implore you, much like I am doing myself in this episode, is to take a step back and realize that while we have in our world, we think we have the best solutions, the best answers to people's problems, it really doesn't matter if they're not paying attention, right? If people aren't tuning in to the radio station that you're broadcasting on, then you're just broadcasting to white noise, right? And you go into the car and you turn the little knob and go, and on the 2 o'clock news today, and you're changing channel, right? Like once you get it lined up and you're like, oh, I can hear that. I can hear it now. I think what happens is too often we're stuck in the noise. So I say all that, James, for today's episode, big takeaways, right? Emotional language, rhyming. I mean, you mentioned the fit, if the glove fits, you must acquit. We talk about the emotion. It's the economy, stupid. We talked about this is your brain. This is your brain on drugs, leveraging metaphors. We talked about when is it too much? I'm sorry. That is my last question for you. When is it too much? When are we in danger of using too much emotional language? When does the emotional language, the metaphors, is there a point where that actually ends up hurting us versus helping us in our trying to get people to pay attention or be aware?
I don't think so. But I want to say, just let me answer this with your changing your name. I don't think you should change your name. I think you should just put a slogan.
Okay. Hit me with it. What are your thoughts?
There was like Morton Salt, when it rains, it pours. So they kept the name Morton Salt, but they have a cool thing. They have a girl, they have rain coming down, everything else they're talking about, it flows easily. And so you can come up, nothing sucks like an Electrolux, okay? But I think you can keep the name because so many people love you and know you and everything else, but give yourself a slogan that really works. And that can resonate in a way as powerfully as having a different name. Just FYI.
You're getting the wheels turning there, James.
You can have lots of fun with it. I give you a whole bunch of examples, but yeah, just negative emotion. So you can use a negative or positive emotion depending on what you're trying to do. Okay. Competitors to Wonder Bread dominated the industry, and they said the whiter your bread, the quicker you're dead. And they came up with a slogan, and so they pissed everybody off, and they stopped buying Wonder Bread. Wonder Bread had to sort of fix their bread and everything else. But the point is, no, I think people want to be affected from an emotional standpoint. And, I mean, there's so many ways. Smells Like Teen Spirit. Remember that song? I love that song. Kurt Cobain was fabulous. Yep, but Smells Like Teen Spirit. You remember the name of the song. I can't remember all the names of the other songs, but that one I remember. You know why? Because he's got the sensory elevation, I call it. It's like plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is for Alka-Seltzer. It sounds or Blue Emu. It works fast and you won't stink. Okay. You know what? I was watching I was sitting here and it was just playing next to me, and I turned and I said, "What did he just say?" So it's just, I think from an emotional standpoint, you can have lots of fun from an emotional standpoint, and people have lots of fun from an emotional standpoint too. I went through one where I was just throwing jokes at people, telling them rhymes and everything else, and they never, they were waiting for more. So
let me show this. So I don't usually do this. I don't cross streams usually, but here, we'll peek behind the curtain for the day job, folks. So this is something that I worked with my team to put in place. Now, James, you tell me, thumbs up, thumbs down. How's that for creating emotion?
That's awesome.
So for the audio listener, this says creating contact centers that don't suck, right? It hits on an emotion. Now, by the way, just to give you guys a peek behind the curtain, our old slogan used to be creating the contact center of tomorrow, which sounds nice, but everybody has called into a contact center and had an experience that sucked, right? And you can relate to that. And that's exactly why we changed this to creating contact centers that don't suck, because it's instantly reframing your approach to a contact center, not saying like, oh, I need to buy a contact center, but rather we need to make sure our contact center doesn't suck. And that has been just an absolutely amazing change in our go-to-market, and to see the reaction. So something as simple as that, right? Like you literally could just flip the switch.
Yep, and that's because suck is a trigger word. And trigger words, it goes back to it's the economy's stupid. It's like, what? So I love saying dirty. Would you call your product dirty? How about movies? Dirty Dancing, Dirty Harry. I mean, who would call it that? But because it has that trigger word, like you have suck, it sucks. There's something about trigger words that wake up the brain where you go, huh? And that's what we want, is we want to wake up the brain, because we're competing against so many messages or products or services that there are so many out there that we want to stand out from the crowd. And these will help.
All right, James. I can't believe we're already at an hour. So with that, we're going to go ahead and have to put an end to the conversation, which, by the way, just elephant in the room, I feel this is part one of a several part conversation. You and I are more likely to continue on behind the scenes, and maybe even have you on again in the show sometime soon, because I forget. Oh goodness, I feel bad because the guy I had in the show, his book is this. It's the tip of the iceberg, and he calls it iceberg selling. So tip of the iceberg, and a whole bunch below it. I said this before. I think this is iceberg podcasting. That was just the tip of the iceberg for us, and a lot more below the surface. So with that being said, James, we obviously want the audience to be able to have a call to action today. So number one, go buy Brain Glue, which is available over on Amazon, and we'll make sure we include all those links in the show notes. But any final calls to action or any words of advice, James, beyond just the plethora of things you've been able to give the audience today, but any real big key takeaways?
So I think there are two of them, okay? The first one is come up with a metaphor. It's just my product or service or my idea is just like blank, and be as crazy as possible. You can have lots of fun. There's a guy who came up with an electric razor, and he calls it the lawnmower. Okay, who calls an electric razor the lawnmower? And it took off like gangbusters. And he changed the name of his company to Manscaped. So you landscape a man with a lawnmower. I don't want to get too much into it, but my product or idea or service, whatever else it is just like, and have fun with it. Get as crazy as possible. That's the first one. Also think of the words, the logical words that you would use, and what are words that rhyme with them. And once you get words that rhyme with them, I say switch your pitch if you want to get rich, and I said, Brain Glue shows you how to light the fire of desire in your buyer.
The riches are in the niches. You can have all that fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those things work, and we forget that even politicians use these things, and they understand that it's because it sticks to the brain. It resonates more. It triggers the emotion sides of the brain, and because of that, you get better response. And that's what you want. You want to stand out from the crowd. You want your message to stand out from the crowd. You want your product or service to stand out from the crowd. And and these are ways to do it.
James Bond, this has been an amazing conversation. I've learned oodles. I know the audience has learned oodles as well. So to my lovely audience, please, from today's conversation, I'm going to ask you to go into the show notes. First of all, I know usually I don't give you guys homework, but this is your homework today. Go to the show notes, click Brain Glue, buy a copy, get it, sent to your home, get it on your Kindle, however you like to consume your content. Please support James and this amazing book, because in turn, he's going to help you do better, whether it's trying to sell more product or trying to grow your business or trying to convince your lefty friend that, guys, there is a different way of thinking. And why won't you just listen to these great ideas? Oh, it's because we're not using the right language. We're not meeting people where they're at on the issues they care about. And let me add this, in the language that they will most understand. So I think from today's conversation, there is so much that we need to unpack. So again, please go ahead, support James, and go ahead and let him know you heard him on the Brian Nichols show. I know our guests love to hear that. So we'll make sure we include James's contact info there in the show notes. This has just been a masterclass, James. Thank you so much. And I guess with that being said, where can folks go ahead, continue the conversation with you on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any of those different websites, or LinkedIn? What's best?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the easiest way to do this. I interact with people all the time on LinkedIn.
Perfect. All right. Link, we'll include that in the show notes. I know it's easier for the audio listener. They're like, I'm driving down the road with my kids in the back of the car. I can't write this down. Link, no worries. And by the way, folks, I just want you to know this is easily one of my favorite conversations we've had here on the Brian Nichols show. I usually save that part to after we hang up the show, but I just need you guys to know this episode is probably one of, if not the most impactful episodes from a changing people's perspectives to actually selling our ideas than any episode of the Brian Nichols Show, because we've talked about how to meet people where they're at. We've talked about how to go through and dig into your discovery questions. We've talked about empathy. We've talked about all the stuff that goes into selling. But what it comes down to is actually getting the conversations to start, right? How do you get those at bats? And it starts with being top of mind, meeting people where they're at on the issues they care about. But again, in the languages and in the emotion that they understand, that they react to. So there's so much we can learn from this episode. So please go ahead, give today's episode a share. When you do, tag yours truly at B Nichols Liberty, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and then for the actual show itself, you can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is you consume your podcasts or your video content. We have both. So just make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that little notification bell, and of course, head down below into the comments. What did you learn today? I know I learned a lot, so I want to hear what your thoughts are. And also, folks, if you'd be so kind, support the amazing folks who support us. And that's our sponsors, because they're the ones who keep these lights on. So Cardio Miracle, for example, they are some of our amazing sponsors. We have our good friends at AMP America, plus our good friends over at the Expat Money Summit 2024. All those links can be found in the show notes. James, this has been a great conversation. Any final words for the audience as we wrap things up?
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. And yeah, just remember, life is short, so have fun. That's the most important thing. Have fun. Remember, I had somebody that had a t-shirt that said, life sucks and then you die. And I'm like, no, this is life right now. This is not practice life. So just have fun.
Here. James Bond, it has been an absolute pleasure. Folks, thank you for joining us. And with that being said, Brian Nichols signing off for James Bond from Brain Glue. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.